Welcome to the Thought Echoes podcast, where we have an opportunity to listen in as people reflect on their relationship with their thoughts and their creative work and how it's changed since their brain injury. My name is Beth Bonness, host of the Thought Echoes podcast. Thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed this month's interview.
Hi, I'm Stacie. I'm originally a country girl from Pennsylvania, although I haven't lived in Pennsylvania or in the US for 20 years. I moved from Pennsylvania to New York, where I met my husband, Johan, a Dutch guy. And life has taken us for quite a ride, I have to say, to London for my husband, Johan's work, to Zurich for my work, where our 3 children were born, Lulu, Frizo, and Cleo, to Tokyo for my husband's work, and then back to Zurich, where we are today. I had just begun a new career as a writer when I survived my stroke. I was living with my family in Japan as we were expats. I was playing tennis 2 to 3 times a week. I was young and in very good health. But then I woke on this particular Wednesday morning and I had a numbness in my lower right leg. And I just thought I slept wrong. So I just said, okay, let's get on with it. But then this wave of listlessness, of inertia was overtaking my entire being. Luckily, my husband was home. When he found me, he knew the signs of stroke. That my face was drooping and I had foam coming out the side of my mouth. And he quickly called the ambulance. I was taken to the Wright Hospital, where a team of neurosurgeons could be assembled. And they were able to perform the, I had an MRI, a CAT scan and an MRI image to tell the doctors that I had suffered a dissection of my internal carotid artery. And because my artery is redundant, which means it's turny and twisty, it's not straight up and down, it would make treatment of this dissection a little bit more difficult, or a lot more difficult. So they brought me into surgery, and they were trying to place a balloon in my carotid artery. But at some point during the surgery, they came out to Johan, my husband, and asked them if they could use an experimental approach, which had never been performed by those doctors or even in the hospital, because the normal method was not working. And luckily, it was a success. I was only the 10th person in Japan, in the whole of Japan, to have this operation. When I woke up, I couldn't walk, talk, or feed myself. I was basically reduced to an infant. And the days that followed, I could only mutter one word. I thought I was saying, Cobb salad, please, or, hi, Johan, but I was actually saying the word one over and over. I wasn't aware of this. Looking back, I think it's ridiculous that I was saying this, but I was. So that was because I had severe aphasia. I suffer from other afflictions, including right-sided hemiparesis, aphasia, agraphia, impaired receptive language skills, and my favorite, emotional regulation disorder. My first year of recovery, I spent more than 1,000 hours in therapy. I was lucky in my unluckiness because the doctors my husband was home. He knew the signs of stroke. The doctors could successfully perform that surgery, which they had only studied in theory. Today, I'm still
Stacie, how old were you when this happened?
I was 30. No, I would like to say I was 36, but I was 46 years old. Yeah.
How old are your kids?
Um,
How old are your kids?
um, the eldest two, they're twins, were 11, and the youngest one was turning 7.
Wow.
It was in between their birthdays. Um, so they had just turned 11, and my youngest one was just turning 7. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been 4 years, and I still spend a minimum of 5 hours a week in speech therapy and another 3 hours a week in PT. I also run two to three 2 to 3 times per week. I practice meditation, visualizing, and do really tough stuff for me, like Sudoku and writing in my journal, which both of those, I don't like anymore because because it's very hard for me to retrain my brain. But yeah, yeah. So that's a little bit about me.
Wow. And then to be in Tokyo, I mean, you traveled a bunch, so it's not like
Yeah,
were away from one primary location, but still to be in a really foreign place. And then to have
yeah,
this happen. And as you said, so lucky that your husband was there and recognized the signs. Wow.
absolutely.
And I can't imagine with 3 little kids. I mean, I was 49, but my kids, the youngest was in high school. So that just felt older. I mean, still hard, but
Yeah,
as hard as I can imagine having littler kids who are asking more questions. The
yeah,
teenagers would wait and ask dad, but to have little kids like, what's going on with mom, and you not being able to explain exactly what's going on, that must have been just really difficult.
absolutely. I think they also experienced a different side of my stroke because my son is very asking questions and wants answers, and he's thinking about it and then asking more questions. And that was probably doing my husband's head in because he didn't know the answers.
Right.
And then his twin sister, Lulu, um, just became the mother of the household. So she was mothering everyone and taking care for her younger sister. And Leo, my youngest, was just in fairyland, right?
Yeah.
She knew something was wrong,
Right.
but she could spend special time with me at the hospital. So yeah,
Easy.
they all
So much.
experienced it
Yeah.
differently. Yeah, yeah.
So you talked about having the new career as a writer when you
Mhm.
had moved, or that had happened right before this. And I know one of the questions with my talking to people is that I'm fascinated with, I mean, obviously the way our brains work, and we get close up and personal with how brains get broken, and careful what you ask for sometimes.
Yeah.
But there was a sense, I'm curious about the sense of the essence of who you feel you are, and the before and after this stroke.
Mhm.
How, you couldn't communicate, this one word kept coming out, even though you were saying things that were clear in your head. And I experienced that too. But just that there was how did that sense of self kind of go along for the ride? Can you kind of
Yeah.
roll back the time a little bit and articulate a little bit of what that felt like, or if you explored that at all?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting question because before my stroke, I was living the expat dream, right? I thought my life was seriously complete. I had three children in a central Tokyo private school, house and travel home, all paid for. Yeah, I was living the dream. But looking back, I don't know what would have happened if I didn't suffer and ultimately survive the stroke. I,
Explain more what you mean by that.
yeah, I I fully believe that we are where we're meant to be. I have never been mad about my stroke. Um, I'm not the same person that I was in February 20th, 2019, but not, who is, right? We've all changed, we've all morphed. My stroke hit the pause button of my life, which I accepted the invitation to change. Yeah, I used it as an impetus. I don't think I would have written a book if I would have not survived my stroke. I would still be thinking about I would still have it on my to-do list, right? But this made sure that I really hunkered down, taught myself to write again, and did it with Seth, of course, my speech therapist, my beloved speech therapist. um, my 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 stroke, like I said, it served as my impetus to do more, to live more, to follow my passions. Suddenly, I was free from all the expectations that I placed on myself, that others were placing on me, or I thought that they were. I think people, myself included, are so wrapped up in our lives that we don't often think about what are we passionate about? Why are we not? Why are we so afraid of following this passion with or without a stroke?
Mm-hmm.
I think following our passions is the only way to lead a meaningful life.
So how was it that, because you were, as you said, you went from changing career to be a writer and had it on your list. Everybody wants to write a book, right? But when did that sense of not feeling like a victim, but was there a moment that you can remember where it was like a switch that got flipped, that you were going to re-examine your passions, or did it just kind of happen over time because now you didn't have all the busy work? I mean, you had lots of work to do, but it was one foot in front of the other, literally, that kind of stuff, versus the project management that a mom would do with three, growing kids. Was there a moment? How did that wave kind of hit you?
I think it came in stages. The first moment that I realized that this would be harder than I thought was I was planning on taking my children to New Zealand for their spring break. And as I was still in the hospital at their spring break, their head of school sent me a care package with a bunch of, she was from New Zealand, and she sent me a bunch of stuff from her home land, because she knew, and the card read, because I know that you can't go to New Zealand and you were planning on it. I was like, oh, I can't go. So it was like, oh, that the penny didn't drop yet. I'm like, okay, something, okay, I can't go to New Zealand. Okay. And then we went to view stroke rehabilitation centers in Japan. Japan is a graying population. So I was mortified at the stroke rehabilitation centers. I couldn't imagine getting well there.
Right.
So I decided to strong arm my doctors and my husband and my friends to allow me to go home to rehabilitate.
I would think the
Because
language, did they speak enough English to be able to do it? Or were you dealing with people that English wasn't their first language, on top of the difficulty of you trying to?
Yeah. So I already had my speech therapist virtually, Seth, about the second week of my stroke, but he was we did telepractice, so I could have him in the hospital. So that
was good.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's still my speech therapist, although he's also in the States and I'm here. So I think going, I think it was a gradual process, because first of all, I didn't know how bad I was, and when I found out that I had to go to a rehabilitation center, and that I pushed that away, and I just wanted, to the detriment of my numbers, let's say, I don't know the days of the week, I don't know the months of the year, I can't do simple maths, but I can write now. So to the detriment of a lot of other things, to the detriment of a lot of other things, I knew that I was going to get that back. So following my passions just came kind of naturally, but I was pointed in the direction, if you know what I mean.
Right. So in the States, where did you come back? Pennsylvania? You went to rehab here in the States, or where did you go?
No, I went, my husband allowed me, let's say, to rehab at home. So he brought in a nurse to
Oh,
watch
okay.
me
In Tokyo.
just to, yeah, in Tokyo.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
And then you were with the kids, because I thought the whole family moved back to the States because that was originally home. So
Oh, home. Yeah.
I
Sorry.
misunderstood.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we just, I carved out a schedule.
Mhm.
And that was very difficult for me to because I didn't know numbers, and so but I presented Johan with a schedule of what I was going to do when, and he was like, "Okay, we'll try."
Mhm.
So he brought me home.
That's good. I remember with mine that I wouldn't say that the numbers, it was harder to process stuff, but I do remember because I was working. And so all the disability insurance, the paperwork with the insurance and
Oh,
all the follow-up. And I thought, okay, this is a pain in the rear end, but it is exercising my brain to have to call and
yes,
repeat what happened and to follow the appointments. And so I just, to your point, you're not a victim. This becomes your exercise routine, and
yeah, yeah,
you use whatever's in front of you as a way to practice. So
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
so with your journaling, how are you now? If you can talk about kind of the creative process, so the before and after you change, like you said, everybody changes, and we all do, especially COVID has kind of woken everybody up to whether you
Yeah,
wanted to or not, you did. But there must have been some thread of what you wanted to do to tap into those passions that were kind of there before, or was it that you'd never given yourself permission to kind of say, what does Stacie really want to do? Because you're so busy being a mom with 3 kids and a wife and a professional.
yeah,
So tell me about that.
yeah. I can't say that my creativity, I don't know if it's more or less since my stroke. I don't know if my level of creativity is more or less since my stroke, but I can wholeheartedly say that I've accepted the invitation to get the most out of it. So I think it's the latter of what you just said. I think I didn't allow myself prior to 4 years ago to even explore writing a book, for instance, or blogging, or I thought that this was beyond my reach somehow. It didn't seem like a job until it was.
And then when I know that people often, and I had that kind of filter on this getting into these podcasts, is I was looking at creatives who had had brain injuries. So writers, musicians, painters, dancers. And then in one of the interviews, it was the realization that the creativity that was involved in how you are going to get through the day with the new obstacles that you have to navigate. Creativity is so much broader. Creativity is all about problem solving. And so there's the kind of stereotypic creative types that are doing problem solving and visualizing and all of that. But that spans across, everybody is creative. They just don't necessarily call themselves creative. So
Absolutely.
we're very creative. You are being very creative.
Yeah.
So with the book, how did you decide to write the book that you did?
Well, I had with so I knew that I wanted to write a book. That was my goal for writing. I had a list of goals, and this was my goal for writing. And then we made a breadcrumb path of how I would get there. I would write 20 blogs. First of all, one email, 20 blogs, um, until I found my voice, let's say. And then it just kind of, yeah, how do I say that? It just kind of formed in front of my eyes. The book was like right there. And then I thought to myself, okay, now I know, now I have a subject matter, which I was probably, before my stroke thinking, oh, what am I going to write about? Okay, a stroke.
Yeah, I'll just
And
plug that one.
yeah, and I think it just kind of happened naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so who was your, you have this speech therapist. And
Yeah.
so was the speech therapist the one that helped lay out the breadcrumbs for you for the book, or was that somebody else that worked with you?
Yes, Seth is basically my speech therapist, my therapist, my he's my friend.
Mhm.
He's become a friend. Yeah, so he laid out the breadcrumb path, and we decided that this is what I had to do. I had to X, Y, and Z until I could write a book, and then the process began of,
Hmm.
you know, not collaborating, collating all of the blogs and filling in the blanks, and
Right.
it was, yeah. And I have a very good editor, so it yeah. Now that I've gone through the process,
Mhm.
I won't. Yeah, I'll do it again, but not so fast.
Well, it must have been, what kind of closure did you get? I mean, besides having a goal that you can, check off your list, how did the closure of actual, because it was the stroke, it wasn't some work of fiction that you did, which is an important book project in and of itself, but for this
Yeah.
project, because it was about you and your strokes, how was that closure when you were done?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think it's funny because it was, of course, it was cathartic to write the book, and it was cathartic to put it all down. And at the end of it, it's a memoir about my first year of stroke recovery.
Mhm.
But I think what I found probably the most significant in in and of itself is that the 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 trauma of having the stroke released something inside of me where I I was trying so hard to get that back. And then in the middle of the year of my first year of stroke recovery, I realized that I don't want to go back to where I once was. I wanted to even go further. Um, I say a lot, Stacie 2.0, and that means to me that it's not about recovery anymore. And I learned that in my first year. I think this was the most significant part of my closure. um, I realized that I wanted a transformation. I didn't want to just be Stacie 1.0 anymore, because she had a lot of problems, right? She was smug, she was selfish, and I don't want to be her anymore. So I think going for the new Stacie is probably the biggest work of art that came out of writing that book.
Wow. That's a huge statement. I feel like I need to leave a long pause to let that sink in to people who are listening. That's huge. That's huge. And you say that you refer to Stacie 1.0 with a combination of um, removal as a different person, but an acknowledgement and ownership of who that person was, and an active decision to make a change. But often people don't talk about what they're changing from. They just talk about the
Yeah,
newness. And so
yeah,
it wasn't just about so you're looking at Stacie 1.0 as being the person before the stroke. And then there's this interim, uh, like you're in a cocoon trying to figure out what you're going to come out butterfly wise,
yeah,
for the transformation with this Stacie 2.0.
yeah,
Wow, that's compelling. So what's
yeah.
your next? I know you've got a newsletter, which I signed up for, and you've got blog, which I've been looking, but I tried not to get too much. I wanted to get the fresh story from you. But tell me about what some of your next goals are.
Yeah, so I've just I've pre-published, let's say. I've just pre-released, let's say, a digital course called Family 2.0.
Hmm.
It's a caregiver's guide to stroke recovery. I think this is all the tips and tricks that some of which we did know, and some of which we would have liked to know from people going through the same. So it's written by me, but it's for families of stroke survivors, where they can at the end of the course, they can create an actionable and impactful plan of action, from finding support for everyone, including the survivor, including the family members, to impacting their therapist, to relinquishing the power back to the survivor. Yeah, it's based on passion-based therapy, which I fully attribute my success.
Can you speak more about that? Is that about finding your passions and focusing in on your passions? Is that what the passion therapy is?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's knowing what you're passionate about, and that's a process in itself. And
Right.
then having the stamina and the wherewithal and the support to go there and
I mean,
realize your big dream.
It makes total sense. If you think about the energy that we get when we're doing something we're excited about, and then the drudgery when we're not, why wouldn't you want to tap into that energy of passion and then just reframe the things, the work you need to do, the therapies you need to do within that framework, rather than, oh, here's the laundry list of exercises I have to do,
Right. It's a slog to recover. Yeah, it's just painful, and it is. Yeah, the only way that I can describe it is a slog. It's a slog to recover, right? But if we embrace our what we're passionate about and reframe it, like you just said, it makes a world of difference.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about as parents, as women who have babies, and you prepare for that, you learn as much as you can, and then like your body just takes control. And you're thinking, okay, millions of women have done this for a long time, so I'm going to get through this. I'm not in control like I think I'm in control. But then the recovery, you're not sleeping, your nipples hurt, you're just, everything hurts, but you've got this bundle of joy. And so that passion and excitement of why you did it helps the slog kind of, it becomes bragging rights, like, yes, I survived, the first
year. Exactly.
No, that's
exactly
very cool. So this is a perfect pivot in the couple minutes that we have left, in terms of what, if you could go back to your pre-stroke self, what piece of advice would you give you, Stacie 1.0? Not that she would listen to you, but if you could go back.
Exactly. If she would listen to me, I would say, hey, there's more to life. Just stop what you're doing. Time is fleeting. I would ask myself very pointed questions. Are you really where you want to be? Are you happy where you are? And like you said, I definitely would have listened. I think sadly it takes a life-threatening situation sometimes to make us see the need for change.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't wish a stroke on anybody, but the richness of life afterwards, you can intellectualize it, but sometimes it takes unfortunately, the physical experience. So if there's a way to have people get there without having to go through a traumatic life event, that would be great. But
exactly.
And what piece of advice, and this may come from the class you put together, but what gems or things pop to the top in terms of what caregivers you'd like caregivers to know in supporting somebody who is recovering from, or is in, because recovery, it's like you're a different person and you learn to live, but using that vernacular, what advice would you give to a caregiver?
I think the best piece of advice is let your survivor, or not let your survivor, but advocate for your survivor to follow their passions, and then grab onto them like a pit bull. Tell everyone that you meet, impact the therapist, the doctors. I think there's a difference between what the doctors say is possible and what actually is possible. The doctors told me, my husband, they didn't tell me that I would never ride again due to my severe aphasia. So, so I think there's a difference between prognoses and possibilities. I think there are no absolutes. If your survivor is passionate about gardening, about baking,
do it.
grab onto that. Yeah, do it. Yeah. In the end, you have to accept the invitation and grow with it and accept it again tomorrow and the next day afterwards. It is very much a slog to recover, as we said, but if you if you reframe that, yeah, as a transformation, then it's a little bit softer approach.
I love your using the word invitation because it implies an openness and a choice to whether you're going to accept it or not, versus I'm a victim and I have to, so the invitation is such a powerful, empowering way to look at it.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Stacie. And I'll include links, to your website and the classes and all of that rich material that people are going to be lucky to be exposed to, and that you're helping people by what you're doing. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much. And it was nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it was very nice meeting you. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining me this month. If you enjoyed this episode, please tell your friends, leave a comment, and subscribe. Until next month, take a moment and hug someone you love.